Welcome to your next module, all focused on another non-calorie counting method. So in this module, it's all going to be focused on portion control, and there's lots and lots of different types of portion control methods. However, what we're going to do today is focus on two of the most common forms of portion control. So to begin with, we're going to go into the hand method, and we'll explain more in a moment. There's also the plate method, and then like we said, with every single diet type out there, there's going to be pros and cons, so we're going to delve into that into a little bit more depth as well. So to keep it really, really nice and simple, when it comes to the hand method, it literally is just using your hand to ascertain exactly which sections of nutrition to put on your plate. So let's say, for example, we begin with 2 palms of protein. We move on to 1 closed fist of carbohydrate sources. We've got 2 open hands of fruit and or veg. And then lastly, 1 thumb-sized portion of fat. So again, a really, really nice, simple, easy method to use on the portion control side of things. On the plate method, this one is obviously, instead of using your hands, we're trying to section up portions in literally on the plate itself. So to begin with, in the top left, we've got 1/4 of the plate with high fibre carbohydrate sources. And then in the bottom left-hand corner, we've got 1/4 plus of the plate in protein. So I put plus because obviously different people have different protein requirements. So what we may have to do is just manipulate it a little bit and maybe have 1/3 of that plate of protein, for example, and maybe reduce a little bit on carbs and fats, for example. On the right-hand side, we've got almost 1/2 plate of veggies / fruit. And then we've got a small section just at the bottom, just because more often than not, there's going to be some fat content in your meals as well. So again, it's just about trying to have some sort of visual standpoint when it comes to what's going onto your plate, and having a method like this just gives you a nice element of consistency going forward. So for breakfast, your lunch, your evening meal, if it looks roughly like this might be a really useful method for you as an individual. So as we mentioned, there's lots of different pros and cons to lots of different dietary strategies. So specifically for portion control purposes, some of the pros are, of course, it's really simple to follow. The descriptions we've just given you there, it literally is as simple as that. It can be used anywhere. So let's say if you're in a restaurant, if you're on holiday at the all-inclusive buffet, for example, you can have a sort of visual in your mind if you're going to be using that plate method, for example, or indeed the hand method. It's also flexible. I touched upon this just briefly. So it can be manipulated, because if you have higher protein needs, for example, you can reduce portions elsewhere and proportions, and then increase the proportion of protein, for example. And also, when it comes to portion control methods, there's lots of different examples of it within the research to show that it has been successful in accelerating results like weight loss, for example. So some of the disadvantages really is it can be difficult to know if you're hitting your numbers, like protein, for example. If your protein goal is 130 grams of protein per day, for example, how do you know if you're hitting that, and also it might look as though there's 1/4 of your plate, for example, from protein sources, but 1/4 of a plate of eggs might look different to a 1/4 of a plate of, let's say, for example, lean steak or something like that, or chicken or fish. So obviously there's different amounts of protein in different protein sources. However, when it comes to a portion control method, it's not really about perfection. It's much more to do with giving yourself a nice, easy blueprint to follow. So just bear in mind that it can be difficult to know those numbers, and also not just protein, but other numbers, for example, like your total calorie intakes. Is it going to be way off where you need to be? Is it going to be way under? It's sometimes quite difficult to know. And then also certain meals can be a little bit more difficult to assess. So if you literally have, for example, some roasted veg, a piece of steak, maybe a little bit of butter on there, and let's say a jacket potato or something like that, it's quite easy to see those different sections. However, different recipes have different compositions, and it's very difficult to look sometimes just by eye and think, is a quarter of this roughly protein, this chili con carne, or a bolognese, or let's say a chicken curry, for example. So it can be a little bit problematic when it comes to certain recipes. However, again, if you're somebody that doesn't have those types of recipes, it can be a really, really useful tool. So it might be worth, in instances like that, taking a look at the ingredients to begin with before you cook them, and obviously put them into a sauce, for example. It might be worth just having a little bit of a think around the preparation phase rather than what it looks like on the plate. So hopefully this helps you. The portion control method can be very effective. It can be unbelievably useful. And again, like we said, with all diet types, it's really down to making sure that we're taking a look at all these different options and thinking, is this one that's going to work perfectly for you personally?